Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of our autism awareness podcast called Spectrum Stories. I'm your host, and my name is Aarav Sharma. I'm an autism advocate and founder of AllyHQ.ai, which is a communication platform for families of special needs children. In our podcast, we invite change makers from the autism community who are making significant positive impacts in their lives through their work. Today, we have with us our very special guest and a significant influencer, Miss Kavitha, who is an engineer, volunteer, entrepreneur, and more importantly, a mom of 2 kids and 1 fur baby. She's a big advocate of pursuing competence and teaching age-appropriate education for every kid, regardless of their challenges. Teaching to one's abilities and exposure to stimulating content is a mantra she followed with her son on the spectrum. In her free time, she walks her dog, spends time with the kids chatting about nothing, and enjoys her dance classes. So without further delay, let's welcome in Miss Kavitha. Hi, Miss Kavitha, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us and considering my request.
Thank you, Aarav, for hosting me. I want to start off by saying I'm really impressed with your initiative, drive, motivation, empathy, and your leadership skills.
Thank you so
Uh,
much. I really
it's
appreciate it.
really heartwarming to see the youth take leadership in spreading autism awareness and taking a lead to have a community that you envision and very inclusive community. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind words. And let's dive straight into your journey with some of my questions. As a parent of an autistic child, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced along this journey?
I have a 20-year-old on the spectrum. So he is minimally verbal. He talks for his basic wants and needs, but uses assistive technology to convey deeper communication. He's a sophomore in college now. He's pursuing a major in UC Santa Cruz in cognitive science. My experiences with autism is all rooted with me learning how to navigate the system and helping him lead a meaningful life. So, one of the biggest challenges I've had is really finding time to look for solutions to the various issues special needs throws at us without succumbing to stress. So, I think 2 factors, the stress and time, and managing both. That's the biggest challenge.
So, as a STEM tutor, I've noticed that every child is on the spectrum, obviously. So, each of them has their own unique strengths and weaknesses. So, could you share some of the strengths that you've observed in your child despite the challenges of autism?
Yeah, his desire to learn. He just loves to learn and he enjoys every aspect of learning. And he's also very spiritual, he's very forgiving, he's very kind, and he's very mature for his age, which is qualities I don't expect quite a bit from a lot of teens to have that kind of maturity. But his ability to learn is what is his greatest strength.
So, during my badminton course, I noticed that a lot of these parents were actually a little bit stressed out because they weren't able to find a lot of these therapies, for instance. And they had really recommended that with a child on the spectrum, early detection and intervention are crucial. So, how did you first notice that something was potentially different with your child, and what steps did you take to seek this diagnosis?
I was one of those parents who was blissfully unaware that anything was wrong till my pediatrician told me that I should take him for speech therapy since he wasn't talking a lot. So we were in one of those early intervention speech schools when I heard the A word from other parents, autism. So I had to actually go and Google it up to see what it was. But I would say that was the beginning of my journey, actually, parents who were my guiding stars. And from then I had to read and I had to get all the information to keep him going.
So earlier in our podcast, you had mentioned that you used an assistive technology. So could you describe a little bit about how this technology works and what's the name of it so that other parents can potentially refer to it?
Yeah, we really struggled to reach my son till he was about 10 years of age because he only spoke for his wants and needs and he could not handwrite well. It was very hard to figure out what he wanted or what he wanted his desires were. So at the age of 10, we were introduced to this method where we use a low-tech AAC to point to numbers and letters in an alphanumeric board. And I was inspired by that method, and I used that to build upon his communication skill. And that has really changed our life. I wouldn't say it's a method we stuck to. We were inspired by many low-tech AAC methods. And the important thing all these methods taught me more than anything was to presume competence. That if you know how to reach a person, anybody can be reached. So communication is still the hardest thing for people with autism, but the channel can be broken if you try to and if you try hard.
So was there like a memorable moment with you and your son regarding some sort of verbal communication that you had?
Yeah, when he started communicating, I was really taken aback by the things he knew about me just by watching me. I never would have thought he would know those things about me. And one of the things which really was memorable was I was just casually asking, what do you tell me two things you knew about me? And he told me about my favorite song, which I hadn't told anybody else. And I said, how do you know it? And he said, because you play it all the time and you smile. It was very heartwarming to know that he was watching me and he was really there, present, right?
Yeah, so definitely parenting an autistic child, it obviously has some of the memorable experiences, but it also can be really emotionally and physically demanding. So, how do you prioritize self care amidst the responsibilities of caregiving? And how do you think this self care benefits you or impacts your ability to support your child effectively?
So, one thing I would tell other parents is it's a marathon and don't feel guilty about taking time for yourself, be it your workout routine, your dance. I do take time for myself every day, or going out for dinner with your friends once in a while. It's not like that 1 hour is going to make a difference in your therapy life with your child. So self care is important because it's a marathon, you're in it for a very long haul. The other thing is really being organized. So quality of time matters more than the quantity. And if you're stressed and you're not ready to interact or make a difference, back off. It is okay. So that's the advice I would give a parent. And it doesn't matter that you put in 18 hours. 2 hours of quality time would make a difference, same difference, instead of snapping and burning out and getting emotionally drained.
Regarding autism, I've noticed that it has a negative image behind it, even though there's really limited knowledge behind it. So, could you provide some of the misconceptions that you've noticed, and what of these misconceptions would you like to dispel about autism?
So the first thing is non-speaking doesn't mean non-thinking. I think that is a very important takeaway message. Uh, there are many people with autism who have self-stimulatory behaviors. They might have minimal verbal language. So speech is just verbal. Language can be more receptive. One thing is they are capable of taking in receptive language and processing it just fine. Talking stuff about them like they don't exist is something that I think we should be very aware of a community not to do. And really, non-speaking does not mean non-thinking. They are thinking and processing. The other thing which I hear very constantly is that autistic people have no sense of humor, empathy, or feelings. No. I have seen students who have learned to communicate, as I said, being the most sensitive people who are watching people around them. They're very sensitive to others' needs. And say, my son, for example, humor, he's really funny. And he makes these one line comments that are really amazing. And he watches Seinfeld, Big Bang Theory, Young Sheldon, laughs. I really think that is one other thing. And the third thing is not everybody with autism need to be a savant. So he's in college, he works hard, he's a very smart kid like any other smart kid. But it's not like he has these quirky abilities to do everything. Hard work is a big piece. So not everybody is a savant. So those are some of the things. And stereotypes, yeah, they do have self-stimulatory behaviors, but there's a person underneath all that. So it is okay to reach out. It's okay to tell them a hi. Even if they are not responding right away, do know that they are listening to you and they're very happy and they acknowledge.
So at the nonprofit organization where I volunteer at, they provide a lot of after school programs that can really make it easier for families with special needs children. For instance, they provide like STEM and other educational workshops along with physical education as well. So how have you found some support from your community, whether it comes through family or friends or other parents of autistic children?
So my survival has been through my parents' network. So I've been part of many support groups and I have learned so much from those parents. And that's how you get the information. Say, for example, there's a nonprofit which is offering something. I've learned all that from parent groups. I've also, as a family, we make a very conscious decision that he's involved in everything we do socially. So we come as a package, people can take it or leave it. So that is one thing that my friends and my social community has learned to embrace, that he's there. Either you cannot want all of us or you can want us. So this has given him a sense of normalcy, and he's very happy given the social opportunities we do. But mainly it has been my friends network and the other parents who have supported me through this journey. So I cannot imagine it without my besties.
So describing when you were describing your child, it sounded like he was a really bright child. And going straight into my question, looking towards the future, what are your hopes and aspirations for your child, and how do you plan to support them in achieving their goals?
I don't think my goals are any different than the goals a parent has for their typical child. My hope is he'll have a good quality of life and he'll be a productive citizen. He will take up a job which works with his health and his profile. He might need an aid and support to achieve it for majority of his life, given the nature of his challenges, motor challenges, regulation. But that's a small part of the disability, but his strength still remains. And my hope is he will nurture that, and I'll be able to help him nurture that. So now he's in college and he's doing already a paid internship with a job coach. And we are figuring out what are the challenges that come with having a job and what are his strengths that he can bring to the table in a job. I won't say it's easy. He's what I would call the moderate to severe autism, but it's definitely doable if you focus on strengths.
So, as you mentioned, speech therapy was really beneficial for your child as well. So, therapy is often considered to be a cornerstone of support for children with autism. So, how do you believe that therapy, in addition to the speech therapy aspect and intervention programs, contributed to the development and well being of your child? And what types of therapies do you suggest have found you to be most beneficial?
So with therapies, there are so many options. And as a parent who has tried many of them, I can say it depends. Some things will work for you, some things might not, but it might help somebody else. So you have to give it some time. I would say at least a year to 2 years, sincerely, with each therapy. And then you can decide for yourself if it's a fit or not. For us, occupational therapy, we modified it over the years because the kind of structured movement has been very important. So as part of his day, he would do some kind of, it's not an occupational therapy anymore, but it's physical fitness. The OT has emerged into a physical fitness program for him, which is very beneficial. And of course, the key for us for everything has been really breaking that communication channel and building that parent-child relationship. And also, the biggest therapy is enjoying him as a person, taking vacations with him, forming that memory, visiting friends, and giving him a lot of normalcy. We've done camps, we've done international trips, everything. We do modify it to fit our needs. He has diet needs. So wherever I go, my kitchen goes with me, but it hasn't stopped us from having a normal life. So I think important part of therapy is also take time to enjoy the time with the kid and have that relationship.
So while your child was going on these international trips or these camps, did you notice that it took him some time to really break away from his shell and interact with some of his peers, or was it just a little bit more immediate that he could be extroverted and he could really talk to his peers?
He still needs his communication device for any kind of interactions. He likes vacations where he can be in the beach around people. So it doesn't necessarily for him have to be interacting and chit-chatting with people around him. It might be that his interactions are limited to the group we travel with, which is our friends and family, but he truly enjoys being in a pool or in the beach with everybody else, watching people being happy. He says it brings him a lot of positive energy. So that is the way he would interact. He's never going to go and say hello to a stranger on the beach. He probably will stick to talking to us.
So, as a parent of an autistic child, what advice do you have for the broader community in terms of fostering inclusivity and understanding for individuals on the autism spectrum? And what do you believe are some simple ways that people can essentially be more supportive and accommodating in everyday interactions?
So one is really talking normally to people on the autism spectrum. You do not have to do any baby talks, water it down, um, because they are listening and they're very appreciative of the interaction. And also, as a community, being inclusive and having youth being involved, having inclusive opportunities becomes very important because we all agree that segregation is bad in any form, right? So, this is a form of segregation. If we believe that racial segregation is bad, segregating somebody based on their disability is not acceptable too. The other important thing is I really have a lot of hope on your generation because I do think you guys are super empathetic, very accepting, but there is also a responsibility from our side to bring in awareness. So that's an important aspect. So for example, I volunteer for the Brain Foundation. It's a nonprofit, and our mission is to fund translational research to address medical comorbidities and autism. But as part of it, I lead a youth ambassador program, which we are just starting. And it's an inclusive program to get youth volunteers to participate in social awareness projects and get an insight into medical research um, around autism. So that's something I've taken up now. So I think really the thing is give them a chance. Just be inclusive. That is the message I would like to give.
I actually had taken a podcast with a person who's on the board of the Autism Society of San Francisco. And during our podcast, he had mentioned that the government had actually really hindered his way into providing more resources for his autistic son. So could you tell me a little bit about the insurance or any other help that you had gone from the government to support your child with autism, and how has this assistance impacted your family's journey?
California is a really amazing state for that reason, right? So they do have programs in place to help families with the journey. So when they are even, I think, 3, as soon as they get diagnosed, there's something called the regional center, and it's local to every county. The South Bay will be called the San Andreas Regional Center. And you can enroll with them, and they do have some respite help basically, when the kids are young, it is assumed that the school system will provide most of the services. But when they grow up, you start to get more and more help from the government. And the current program that they've introduced is called Self-Determination Program. It's called the SDP. The SDP provides individuals and their families with a lot more freedom, control, and responsibility in choosing services and supports to meet individual objectives. So in my son's case, he wouldn't benefit from being in adult daycare or a vocational program because his motor skills are pretty bad, but he can sit and geek out all day. He's really amazing with studies. So the self-determination plan helps us pay for his personal assistant to go with him to college, help him through his college routine, organize his work, because he does struggle with organizational skills. So this is something that a parent cannot afford, like 35 hours to 40 hours. of a person that to in Bay Area to make it worthwhile for them. So I think there are programs out there. The government is trying really hard, and California is really amazing. One of the best states for special needs parents.
That's glad to know. And in your opinion, could you explain the difference between high functioning and low functioning autism spectrum disorder? And how do you think these distinctions really impact the daily lives and support needs of individuals on the spectrum?
So personally, I think it's the level of motor challenges, initiation, and motor planning that differentiates the higher and lower functioning. So if you look at the lower functioning kid, they have something called motor apraxia, a lot of them. So it's a disconnect between what your mind says and how much your body can do. The connection is not great. So you will find them stalling, you will find them like not responding to command. Do they know? My son can perfectly type out what I told him. Will he do it right away? He struggles to make his body move. So in a high functioning kid, I think I see less of the motor problem. And then, but all of them seem to have some level of organizational skill issues. So the support will depend on how much they would need to get through their life skill component, independent skills component, depending on their motor apraxia. But I have seen that depending on even regardless of the level of functioning, the communication is impaired at some level, and working on it has been the key for us. So nobody calls my son low functioning anymore, but I do think his motor challenges are significant because he's in college. But I wouldn't call him higher functioning as per the definition because he still needs a lot of help. So I frankly don't know if it makes a difference, those labels.
So I've noticed that in my badminton program, it would always usually be filled up during the summer as well. For instance, there would roughly be about 30 kids or more in this badminton program. And I've noticed that physical and exercise in general, it can be crucial in supporting the well-being of individuals on the spectrum. And what kinds of exercises or physical activities or like maybe yoga poses in general have you found beneficial for your child? And how do you think they contribute to their development?
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, we moved from the idea of occupational therapy to physical activity. So even now, my son does an hour and a half to 2 hours of physical activity each day. It's important for his regulation. It's important to calm down his body, give his body adequate sensory input. So we do a combination of hiking. He does play table tennis. Sometimes he'll go out and play tennis. He does resistance bands, a little bit of weights, elliptical. Does he do it perfectly? Absolutely not. There's a lot of learning process, there's a little bit of clumsiness, and that is all okay, but he moves. We actually didn't realize how impactful physical activity was till I think during the COVID, the last 4 or 5 years. And now it's part of his lifestyle. And I think it is really important for kids on the spectrum. Many of them say they don't sleep well and they are very hyper. And I can't emphasize the need for physical activity in this population. I think all of us need it, but really it has been something my son has integrated into his lifestyle.
Have you noticed like a common aspect with, as you're mentioning, table tennis and hiking, or is it just a little bit more spontaneous in that your child is just liking whatever activities he likes to do?
No, I don't think there's a activity has to be practiced. It takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes acceptance that you will never probably do it the same way as somebody with better motor skills. I think just try out. My son also does rollerblades. We used to do rock climbing before COVID. We've tried everything. You can see that even with rock climbing, there's a level of stiffness and um, it takes him a lot longer and it's not as graceful, but big deal. Didn't matter. He was doing it much more than I could. I think I would say just try. There is now he's trying out archery. So his hand-eye coordination is bad, so he will need a hand-over-hand support. But the goal is eventually he will get there. So I think it's important not to be scared and try things out and give it time. It will take years.
the main goals are that if he's happy and like he actually wants to do it and play the sport, or just in general do some physical exercise, I think that would be really beneficial for him and any other autistic child in general. And going into my last question as well, so I've noticed that a lot of these parents have challenges with therapy in terms of cost along with the waiting time it takes. For instance, I heard that there was a therapy that took maybe more than a year or so after they were on the waiting list for such a long time. So, have you encountered any challenges or issues from the medical side while seeking this type of support and treatment for your child's autism? And what improvements or changes would you like to see in the medical approach to autism spectrum disorder?
So that's a big area of challenge, right? The biggest problem is again the stereotype that every behavior in autism is related to their mental health. Not necessarily. If somebody is crying, if a typical child was crying or throwing a tantrum, I don't think the first question is, what's up with your mind? You're going to ask them, are you feeling okay? Do you have any pain? But I think the problem is most of these kids, they are not able to communicate that they are in pain or something is bothering them. So one of the biggest problems parents face is the immediate referral to a psychiatrist for drugs versus actually looking at what could be bothering them. In my son's case, for example, we have multiple autoimmune issues, we have environmental allergies, and taking care of all those and advocating to be treated like anybody else for those ailments has been crucial for us to make progress in it. It has really improved his symptoms of autism, really treating him for pain. If you have a stomach pain, you're not going to be a happy bunny regardless of whether you have autism or not. So I think that has been the biggest challenge, and that is again the reason I volunteer with Brain Foundation, because we need to have research, we need to have biomarkers to identify, and we need FDA approved treatments for those with ASDs. That's one of the big areas of need, and we are working with many physicians. We have a lot of researchers we work with, and our hope is to solve this and have more mainstream treatment options, because there is comorbidities and treating that will lead to better outcomes. I'm not saying that it's only a medical issue, but many kids have comorbidities, be it inflammation, be it headache. If you have a migraine, you do have a migraine, right? So treating it is important.
That's all for today, folks. So thank you so much, Miss Kavitha, for spending your time and talking about your son's journey. And it was a great pleasure meeting you today.
Thank you, Aarav, and good luck with your journey. Be in touch. I'm wishing you the very best.
Thank
And
you so
thanks for
much.
doing this.
Thank you so much. You are a true inspiration. And
Thank
to our
you.
audience out there, we'll return with another Changemaker soon. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Until then, take care of yourself and remember, inclusion leads to innovation. Thank you so much and peace out.